Alright, so we're back here in our project view. Okay, this is actually useful. So if you run into a situation like this where the anchor has moved, you tap scene options and it has a couple of options. So it has an option to move the anchor, so you can like drag it around, tap to set it, but as you can see, that's not really pointing where I like it to point, so therefore I'm going to use the other option, which is reset anchor, and now basically it takes me back to the scanning the plane scene, and therefore I'd rather go with this one. Another useful tip now that we're here under scene options is that if you ever ran into any problems selecting a specific object in the scene, so this might become concrete for you when all the planets are in the scene and you want to just select one of them, and it might turn out to be trickier than you expected. So then you go into scene options and then you go to scene options and scene objects, and now obviously there's no objects in my scene yet, but they will turn up here, and then you can select the individual object that you want. Now another thing to cover here before we start is that by default, if you go under quick actions, there's a few things. So for instance, this you can use a select all functionality, but then also multi-select is by default on. So that means that you can select one at a time, multiple objects, but that actually can, it works very useful in some cases. In some other cases, it might actually be slightly annoying because you want to just adjust something per one object. So if multi-select is on, you need to deselect that object before you can select the other one. So I actually, by default in this project at least, I turn multi-select off. Alright, so let's start bringing in assets. So now what I'm gonna do, in the last tutorial you saw I brought these assets in, so they are like in the project. Here I am, and now it is showing all the assets that I have in my Torch folder. And now regarding these assets, as you can see, so for instance here Jupiter, so there's 4 things per each planet. There's one called just planet.zip, and that is the 3D asset that has the orbit with the planet in the asset itself. I'll explain why that is in a minute. And then we have always another asset, so Jupiter underscore solo here, and you can see a Mars underscore solo there. So that is only the planet itself, and so we're going to use that later on. And then you have 2 of these 2D text and sort of planes. So you have Jupiter.png and Jupiter details.png, which are basically image files, and then we use them they have all the information about the planet that we want to put on display. So what we do in this first instance, we use these assets, the planets which have the orbit in place, and we do that because that with Torch enables us to make the planet circle the sun, and you'll soon see how. So now what I did, I dragged the Mercury onto the scene. It's over here, quite small as you can see, and so with each of these planets we want to do a couple of things. So the first thing is we go to object options and we want to bring them back to the 0. Basically, if we bring them back to the origin, so 0, 0, 0 coordinates, you can see they are basically down there on the ground. So therefore, depending a bit on whether you want to do it like this on in relation to the floor, or the other way that you can certainly do this is on a tabletop. And so if you're doing this on a tabletop, I would suggest that you sort of raise the y coordinate, you increase it by like 0.2, so it's a bit elevated from the tabletop. Now that we are doing this, in this case here in the room, we might go as high as 1, but you know, you can adjust that. But the most important thing is that x and 0 coordinates are at 0, so basically they are floating above the anchor. And so then we accept that. The other thing we want to do is we want to check that all the rotations are 0, and then finally we want to establish a common scale for these, because I prepared the assets so that they are in sort of correct size in relation to one another. But as such, the assets are quite huge. As you can see, this scale is just fractions. But let's go. This very much depends also on the space where you do this. So if you do this on a tabletop, then you might want to keep things even smaller. So it's something for you guys to test. But once I get more planets into this scene, you start to sort of see how that works. And now in general, we don't want to now adjust move the position or anything, but in general in Torch, this gizmo brings up also this rotation and scale and object options, sort of a UI component. And then also I'll just show you this. So you can move stuff around by taking control of one of these handles, or if you go to the middle, then you move the whole asset around. Now what I'll do, I'll just reset the things. So 0, 1, 0. There we go, and then I accidentally rotated it a bit, so I'll 0 these out as well. And the scale is as it's supposed to. Okay, so then we want to bring in, the next planet, and that is Venus. So while doing this, I suddenly was reminded of the order of our solar system, and then obviously, especially if you do this with your kids, that's the whole point. Now we do the same thing. I'll do it here quite quickly. So 0, 1, 0. We okay that. Then we'll just remove any unnecessary rotations that might be in the assets themselves. And then we continue with the 0.3 scale, but as said, you can adjust that. And now you can see that yes, Venus is bigger than Mercury, so that makes sense. Then again, I'm starting to see that things are stretching in my attic space a bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the anchor a bit. So like that, and I tap it there. So now I have a bit more space to work with, maybe. Also, if you ever want to remove an asset from the scene, then the quick actions is the way to go. So you find delete over there, but I won't do that now. I will keep on bringing more assets. So the next one is actually our own Earth. As you can see, this menu swiping, it can be slightly like flimsy, but it does eventually come around. Now, this took a little bit longer time because I think the texture on the map was a bit more detailed. Nevertheless, same stuff, 0, 1, 0. Then we move the rotations. And then we check the scale. Actually, yeah, that's good. So that's Earth. Next one is the red planet, Mars. Remember, it's the assets with the orbit attached, because that basically enables us to spin this asset, whereas you can't sort of program those sort of orbital routes within Torch with assets that wouldn't have the orbit attached. So that's kind of like my shortcut to be able to do this, even if it makes the orbits, which obviously are not visible as such, visible. But that's kind of like a trade-off that I think we're willing to take. So let's keep on bringing assets. So Jupiter is the next one. There we go. And again, 0, 1, 0. And then scale. Yeah, I thought there was something fishy. So just make it the scale align, because Jupiter is supposed to be a big one. And there we go. Actually, it's not absolutely necessary to address the rotations. They are just very slight, and they actually give the planets a little bit of breathing room in this original kind of constellation that we're going to bring them in. Once we get the planets spinning in their relative speeds to one another, then that thing is kind of going away. And now for some reason I lost control of Saturn. So this is one of those cases where you want to go to scene objects and select Saturn so that I can manipulate its values. So position, like so, and the scale is not right. So yeah, we want to make it 3 times bigger. Go. That looks better. And then a few more. Oh, few more assets. So the next one is Uranus. Oh no, not that one. This one. And as you can see, the object options is not available until it has transferred the asset. Here we go. And scale again needs to be 3 times bigger. Right, where are we? We are over here. And finally, Neptune. Where are you? There you are. There we go. And again, it seems that at times when you drag and drop, you lose control. That's not a problem. So 1, 0. One more time, and the scale again 3 times bigger. Okay. So now what I want to do is just tap the viewer, so that basically enables us to get rid of all the gizmos and stuff. As you can see, here are our planets. Where did Neptune go? It is somewhere over there. And now this is basically the minimum thing you want to do. But of course we want to make this scene come alive a bit. And also the one remaining thing, it's kind of optional if you want to bring sun in, because trade-off in a sense sort of obscures some of the planets, but then again it is useful to understand, you know, how big the sun is in relation to our other planets. And no, we just need to address it's not quite that big, but it's still huge. Like that, and now it should be okay. And now we will continue go into adding the planet specific scenes in the next part of the tutorial. If you just want to play around and want to bring this scene alive a bit, what you can start doing, okay, now I have multi-select on, so I want to only select, let's say, Saturn. And then when I go to object options, I can, for instance, put this asset to spin, and we want to spin it on the y-axis. And as you can see, it's very fast. So maybe something like 0.1 is nice. It is circling to the correct counterclockwise direction. And you know, if you want, you can do the same to other planets. So for instance, the Earth. So this is like the easiest way at this point of the whole scene, whole prototype, to bring things alive a bit. But yeah, I hope you managed to bring in the assets all right. And so this is where we're gonna pick up soon. Thanks.